Welcome everybody.
Hi.
And great to see you, Chris. Let's give people a minute to get started before we get started and kick this thing off completely.
For sure.
You're in your offices right now?
Yeah, we're in our offices. We have one of these very nice phone booths. I see the same pattern behind you.
Yes. Is it kind of the same phone booth that we have in the Antler office?
It's exactly the same exactly the same model, yeah. The one that sometimes the light turns off randomly, you know?
Yes, exactly. You may see either of us waving randomly throughout the session. But I see the people pouring in, looking forward to kicking this thing off in a minute. Okay, I think we're getting somewhere here. Good, then let me get the timer started and then we can kick off into the 12 minutes. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Strictly time boxed.
Strictly time boxed. Let's see how that goes. Okay. So, TikTok.
TikTok.
So, welcome everyone. Clock is running. So let's get this show on the road. So welcome to the 12-minute session. This session is one that we do geared for founders that are interested in potentially working with Antler, joining Antler. We can talk a lot about this, but what better version than to hear it directly from the source. So we have with us regularly some of the portfolio founders, people that are building their companies with the support of Antler. Today we have Chris with us, and I'll be interviewing him over the next 12 minutes. He'll do a quick introduction, then we have a quick round of quick fire questions. And then we have a few minutes towards the end reserved for Q&A. So for those of you in the audience, feel free to just use the chat, and already as we're going through the session, throw your questions out and we will pick them up in the end. So let's go. Welcome, Christian. Awesome to have you.
Hi.
Why don't you kick it off by telling us who you are and what you're building?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Maybe first, hi from me as well. Of course, I'm Chris, co-founder of Maya. Maybe a few sentences to myself. I have a super non-linear career path. So I'm a lawyer by training, then a software engineer as a job for a while, then a product manager. So I shifted around from law to tech in kind of the finance VC space. And now I'm building Maya with my co-founder Till, and we are a project financing platform for nature-based solutions. With Maya, we essentially do three things. So we originate projects for investment entities that want to allocate capital into these project opportunities. And then we do a risk assessment of these projects. And we also communicate that risk assessment to these investors. So the investors use us to assess the risk of these projects. And then as a third step, we build tools, so software tools for the investors to assess the data themselves and further go deeper into these project opportunities. So yeah, we have kind of all of these three things going at the same time. So it's a lot of fun to build the team around that. It's very cross-functional. So yeah, lots of learnings in the last months. For the stage, maybe one sentence that we raised our kind of first round after Antler in January and raised 1.2 million. So we are kind of one stage after the first investment by Antler last summer.
Yeah. I think great segue into the first quickfire question. So you started about a year ago, and you met your co-founder Till at Antler. Tell us a little bit about kind of the team formation process. How did you end up in a team? What did that process look like?
Yeah, I think the funny thing is, like, Till and I are kind of the very, very typical kind of Antler process, I think, result where the two of us didn't know each other before, right? So we literally met at the Antler cohort. So we really got use of that process. And so the first things both of us did, I think, was 2 weeks of getting to know everyone. So we got to know the whole cohort that started with us. And then we started just trying different constellations. Till and I met super early over drinks and hit it off and had a very good relationship. But we both of us kind of tried different constellations first before actually working together. And then we had these kind of 6 intense weeks before Antler makes their first investment decision, where we really optimized on testing kind of the real things. So whether set our targets, debriefed really regularly to figure out if working together works. And then, yeah, had to make sometimes had to make hard decisions, right? Like, so we really tried to maximize on speed during this process to really figure out if that could work. And the two of us, I think, weeks before the Antler IC, were very convinced that the two of us would really work as a great team.
Great. And then kind of what came first, the team or the idea, and how did you end up with Maya Climate?
Yeah. I think the idea was always around because Till was basically working in a similar space far down the value chain in carbon markets before. So he advised corporates on their carbon credit procurement. So we were kind of iterating in the climate tech space. I came into the cohort with a legal tech idea, having this background, but kind of we kind of just sat together and tried to figure out what were we both interested in, what do we want to move in the world in the next 10 years, and then we kind of iterated through this space to figure out what makes the most sense. And like for us, it was quite clear, like we did a kind of top level assessment of natural capital as an asset class, and really understood that kind of ecosystem services are not properly valued in. And that's not just carbon, that's kind of biodiversity, water, community values. And so we talked to a lot of project developers and investors in the space, and kind of from there formulated our hypothesis of what this market actually needs to grow. And for us, that was kind of clear that there's just immense barriers to access in these markets, which are both kind of physical access, like money is deployed from the global north to the global south, right? So people just don't have access to each other. And then intellectual access. So understanding what is happening in these projects is not trivial. And that's where we thought we could have the biggest impact in kind of globally in these markets to allow them to grow.
Okay, so I remember very vividly as you kind of settled on that idea and discarded your initial legal tech plans and teamed up with Till, and then almost exactly a year ago, kind of we came on board as your first investor. On all of that journey so far, what's been the proudest moment?
I actually I had to think about that before the session, and it's interesting to ask because there's so many things I'm proud of. And like in general, our growth has been such an intense time that we sometimes, you don't take enough time to celebrate your wins. And it's just like I realized that we've screened over 100 projects. We've chosen 30 great projects that work with us closely now. We have 16 like close capital partners that have agreements with us to source projects through us. 80 active investment entities. So this is huge global organizations that are using the platform. We're currently raising for a project exclusively. And last weekend alone, it's just a cool story that I'm super proud of. I had 3 investors where the investment associates literally spent the whole Sunday on the platform. So I can see that in the analytics. And that for me was kind of the final, our value proposition makes so much sense because like when people use you on a Sunday, there seems to be something there. And these people actually spend hours inside the platform on Sunday. Yeah.
That is absolutely awesome. And reflecting a little bit on kind of the experience that you had with Antler, both during the cohort, but then also as we've kind of worked together thereafter. What did you find kind of as the most valuable thing in that past year and a bit on your journey with Antler?
I think there's 3 components. The one is pre-investment, which is mainly like for me, I did an assessment before when I started to become a founder. I thought like, what is the most likely reason for me to fail before I even have money in the bank? And that is literally running out of time. Like, I think if you're young, if you don't have you personally don't have a bank account that supports you for 2 years, like you're time constrained mostly. You're not necessarily like that's your most valuable resource. So the acceleration of finding a co-founder with very low risk, to be honest, because Antler gives you a small grant to kind of support you during that time. It's low risk, high acceleration. So that I think is super valuable in these kind of in the first phase before the investment. And it's just exposure to 60 other people that also want to found and that give you feedback on what you're thinking. So that is super valuable. Post-investment, I would say it's 2 things. it's operationally, like learning from people like Alan and people that have built businesses before, like the day-to-day things. There's so many admin things when setting up a company that will slow you down, and that is also so much acceleration and having people you can talk about these things with. And then as kind of the highlight, I would actually say for us, it was in the fundraising process. We received a lot of support from Antler in our fundraising process. And I mean, you personally, Christoph, the other associates, people like actually opened their network and helped us to get to the right people. And that was immensely valuable for us to kind of get this fundraising done end of last year.
That's awesome. And great to get that feedback. So for those in the audience, we did not pre-vet the answers that Chris was going to give. Let's go into Q&A. We have a couple of things coming in from the audience, and those kind of in the audience use the Q&A feature or the chat feature to just throw any questions over that you may have for Chris or for myself as we're entering the last 2.5 minutes. So kind of Rohit is asking, did you join the cohort while having full-time work? How's the workload with an Antler? Maybe you talk a little bit about what you saw in the cohort.
Yeah. So I quit my job 3 months before the cohort. So I decided I want to found a company. And I also made the observation with my friends and other people that I knew that wanted to found a company that it's very hard to convince someone to jump on a train that isn't leaving soon. So people spend time in the train station for far too long. So I thought I just have to jump into the train and start it, and then hopefully people will jump on. And that is kind of my advice in general. Like it doesn't make too much sense to be in a stable situation for too long, because it just slows you down so much, and speed is everything. I think in the Antler cohort with us, I don't think there was people who were still working. I would also advise heavily against it, given that this is like, you are meant to really intensely get to know all of these people. If you're not fully in it, then other people will probably choose each other over you, because it's just one of the important metrics to decide on when you search for a co-founder, if people are fully in it.
Yeah, we actually won't accept people into the cohort that haven't quit their jobs. For exactly those reasons. Then another question here is on the conflict with the co-founder. Have you had conflicts? How did you solve it?
I mean, all the time, of course. But I think one important thing to note, I think, is that some people see finding a co-founder as something you can check off the bucket list once you've done it, and I personally think that doesn't make too much sense. It's a relationship that you're building over a long time, and like Till and I see each other more than we see anyone else in the world. Sometimes I'm in conflict with his girlfriend, right? Because I see him so much more than she does. No, I which I think is absolutely fine. But like, so you will have conflicts, and you resolve them by creating a system of kind of debriefing, talking to each other. The system is better than the goodwill, I think. So if you set up a system where you regularly check in with each other and figure out if everything's fine and really get the problems out, and you have open communications about them, I think if you have that system in place, you're good to run, and then conflicts will just happen.
That is well said. So we are up on time. Thanks a lot for joining, Chris. For those of you in the audience, thanks a lot for tuning in to this rapid fire interview. I hope this was helpful, interesting, entertaining, and looking forward to speaking to many of you in due course. If you have questions around Antler, if you have feedback on the session, feel free to write to either me directly, I'll just put it in the chat, or to our general Berlin-based email, and looking forward to speaking to many of you soon. Thanks for joining in. Thanks a lot for your time, Chris. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day. Bye-bye.